As I ring the bell this morning, the bowl, words adapted from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. For this one moment, know only that you are loved, that you are safe and whole and loved. Know that you belong here, here among us, here upon this earth, in your body. However tired or broken your heart may be, whatever fear, disappointment, anger you carry, for this hour, know that you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, breathing beside you and with you. Discover together the way our voices rise and fall together in harmony, in hope. Claim here a resilient freedom, the choice for love, for light, to live with joy and gratitude. Come, let us worship together. Thank you, Nevin Dodson, our guest musician this morning, and to our own Michael Casey. Welcome, good morning, and welcome to members, friends, and visitors of the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River, where our mission is to inspire, inform, and support all who seek spiritual and personal growth and a more equal and just community. I'm Nancy Holland, your service leader this morning, joined by Reverend Sue Browning and the staff and volunteers, as noted in your order of service, who make this morning and every Sunday morning possible. We are glad you're here with us this morning, be it in person or on our Zoom feed. Welcome, as we strive to widen our circle and welcome everyone to the table. I do have a couple of announcements this morning. We're always on the lookout for coffee hosts and greeters and potluck, the third Friday potluck hosts here at the church. So if you have time and are interested, please sign up on the whiteboard out in the lobby. The coffee host and greeter in particular are great ways for some of you that might be newer in the congregation to get to know people and are not onerous long-term tasks.
We have some of those too.
Yeah, we do. We have enough. Yeah, we have enough of those to go around, right? Okay. And from the stewardship team, we're into the second week of our pledge drive, and as of yesterday, had achieved 47% of our goal. 2 weeks. Yay, team. And they want to thank everyone who has pledged so far and would like to encourage everyone, if possible, to turn in your pledge forms before next Sunday. And we all thank you for your generosity to this congregation. And we're also looking ahead to our yard sale, which will be on April 29th. And as many of you know, Jane Hardy has been in charge of that for a number of years, but she is going to be out of commission for from March 1st well into April, we think, with some surgery, but she's going to be fine. But we do need someone to help step in and fill her shoes, to help coordinate the donations, the refreshments, and the sort of the event itself. And if you would like to help with that, we would love to have you on board. You can see John Ramsey in the back. We're also start thinking about what you want to donate for the auction. You know, we usually do service type things, whether it's a luncheon or a dinner or maybe a trip to a museum in DC where you provide the transportation, a tour up to Longwood Gardens, various things like that. So please start thinking about what you would like to offer for the auction. And if you have a thought about goods or services, please contact the office. And now, please join me as we light the chalice. The words are in your order of service.
Good morning. I'll lead us in this. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love of the others be strong in our hearts.
And now please rise in body or spirit as we sing from the great hymnal, our first hymn, 298, Wake Now Our Senses. Well, as I was looking through resources for today's service, I sometimes like to see if there was anything interesting that happened on the date. So I want you to all be sure to know that today is Chocolate Mint Day and Iwo Jima Day and a series of others. But I also found that 455 years ago yesterday, the Edict of Torda was issued in Transylvania by the king. Now, we all know about the Edict of Torda, right? Raise your hands. Familiar? Okay, good. Well, I have to say, Reverend Seuss knows about it. I was not particularly familiar. Okay. So back in the 16th century, there was obviously, as you know, a lot of religious reformation going on in Europe, the establishment of Lutheran, Anglican, and various reform versions of Christianity. But Unitarians and Universalists, who were separate at the time, were more radical, looking unsatisfied with the results, and they wanted further changes, further liberalization in theology, practice, and authority. And those ideas caught hold in Transylvania. We all have thoughts of Transylvania, right? And the reigning monarch there, John Sigismund, took an interest in religious freedom and held a series of theological debates in the 1560s. Pretty forward thinking. He had a court physician, George Biandrata, who was also a supporter of religious reform, and he was familiar with the anti-Trinitarian writings of Michael Servetus, that some of us probably know that name, a Spanish theologian and physician who was criticized by Protestants and Catholics and executed for heresy by Calvinists in Switzerland. With the influence of this physician, Francis David also came to the court to be the court preacher. And after a decade of having these philosophical debates and discussions, King John Sigismund ordered a meeting, and from the conclusion of that, they issued the Edict of Torda, which is really amazing statement of religious freedom, thinking that we were almost 500 years away. The essence is that in every place the preacher shall preach and explain the gospel, each according to his understanding of it. And if the congregation like it, well. If not, no one shall compel them, for their souls will not be satisfied. But they shall be permitted to keep a preacher whose teaching is approved. No one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone, and it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment, for faith is the gift of God. That was pretty groundbreaking, seems to me, in the 1560s, basically saying that no government or state or even religious institution had to hold sway over one's personal beliefs. And I think we still see that today in Unitarian Universalism, where we talk about the search for truth and meaning as an individual right and responsibility, and not to follow blind doctrine. Okay, Sue, I think, has a meditation for us this morning.
Yeah. I feel like I sometimes we all coordinate. First of all, good morning. Good morning. I haven't gotten stood up here. Before I go into the meditation, though, what's interesting for the Edict of Torda is King Sigismund was a Unitarian king. When all the German areas and all the areas around Poland and different places, each person had their own king. So he was saying, Unitarian's going to work for me, but it may not work over here. So a lot of what Nancy's talking about in terms of freedom, it was also about tolerance, and to say that there isn't one way We all need to believe to live in peaceful community. So that was way back when. You also heard the language there of this was done in the context of a lot of faith controversy. So just side history note. Yeah, we can go through there. I do invite us at this point to enter into a time of reflection. Breathe deep. These are words by my colleague Emmy Lou Belcher. Let us take a moment to settle into the silence. Hear and feel your quiet breathing. Hear and feel the quiet of this room, this community of people. As we sit in this quiet, feel the life that stretches between us, that fills this room. Feel the opening of all the windows of our beings and the full outstretching of our spirits. As we reach outward to the life around us, beyond this room and throughout all creation, let us take a moment and hold this sense of life we have. We hold in gratitude the freedom we have to shape and pursue our lives. We come together in gratefulness. We come together to rejoice. As we extend the love of this community, we hold in our hearts those in Turkey and in Syria who continue to struggle with incredible damage. We extend our love and our care to those who have been in war in Ukraine for a year now. We extend our love to each of our families, our friends, those who have had hard weeks, those who have had joy, welcome to new life. As we reach out to all that is around us, we hold that sense of connection, that sense of love. Let's just take a moment and hold what's in your heart. Imagine the life that stretches between us and fills this room. Amen. Nancy will now lead us in acknowledgements of love.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. It's been a while. I think last time I was here, I played a selection of 3 movements from Bach's first suite for solo cello, including what I call his pop song. And there are 6 of those suites, and they're kind of grouped into two groups of 3. And each of those groups goes major key, major key, minor, major. So the second one is what I'm playing from today. So the first movement was the prelude. There are 6 total in each of these, so I'm just doing a condensed version. And the slow movement in each is a saraband. So that's what I'll play next.
And just before Nevin gets going, I'm going to say that while Nevin is playing, we're going to have the offertory this morning. And as we care for each other here today, let us also care for our church home, its missions and its programs by giving as you can, for we are now the keepers of the flame.
Thank you, Devin.
For these gifts freely given, we are truly grateful.
Our reading this morning is by Manish Mishra Marzetti. He's a colleague, he's also a minister. He was up in Cherry Hill for a long time. It's called River Call. Between the rocking of the boat and the sitting down, between the stirring things up and the peacefully going along, we find ourselves here in community, each called for many different journeys, many different life paths onto this river road. Some here are here because of the rocking of the boat. It's been too much tumult, too much uncertainty, too much pain. Some are here with a question about where the boat is going, how to best steer the boat and where the journey ends. Others are here lovers of the journey, lovers of life itself. Here in front, beside, behind, each a passenger, each a captain, doing the best we can. Rest here in your boat with me, the river calls. Listen to how I flow. The sound of life is coursing all around you. Let the current hold you. Let the current guide you. The river gently flows through your heart. Let the current guide you. So our sermon today about something greater than ourselves. So shortly before I began seminary, I was invited by the ministers in my home Unitarian Universalist congregation. I was a member of the Arlington congregation. We had 3 ordained ministers. One was just in charge of children's programs. And all 3 of them, they invited me to join a new lay ministry program. They actually didn't just invite me, they told me I needed to apply. Just imagine having to apply for a church thing. It was a little odd, but I applied and I did get in. I think that was sort of predetermined, but they wanted us to commit. And the plan was for this small group. It was going to be the 8 of us who had gotten into the program, these 3 ministers. We were going to meet every month. And what we were told the purpose of the program was this. It was for ministers and lay leaders to learn to minister more effectively to the congregation and community. So basically the 3 ministers wanted help with ministry, and they wanted our congregation to live into some vision of shared ministry. Clearly it wasn't just something they were going to do. I actually dug the documentation out, and it said it was about creating opportunities to deepen our spirituality and relationships. I was a little skeptical. Was this going to make me an official lay minister? Was I going to get something on my name tag, maybe a sticker or something cool? It was all vague. And I was particularly perplexed by how this group had been selected. There were many leaders in this congregation. It was a congregation at the time of about 1,000 members. And most were not selected. So when I found out, I did keep listening. Why were we selected? And we were selected because we were already dedicated volunteers to the church and community. We had shown leadership skills. Those were already sort of given. And we were spiritually mature. Well, spiritually mature felt pretty good. I had no idea what it meant, but pretty cool that the ministers thought that we had that. What I think it now means, and I want to talk a little bit about spirituality and how that touches each of our hearts today. I'm guessing these ministers saw that we were each open to new learning and doing some honest reflection, that we were folks they had seen open to grow and change spiritually and to encourage others to do the same. So we met for several years, this group. We never got new titles, never got name tags. A few folks moved on, a few folks joined the group. What happened is we grew, though, in our trust of one another. There were times where we were deeply vulnerable, and every time I use the word vulnerable, I always go back to a definition I learned, is vulnerable is a willingness to be wounded. Think about that. We had the ritual of our meeting. We met in a room that was probably about half the size of this. The lights were sort of dim, and we would light a chalice. And then we would delve into a few life topic questions. And somehow the connections felt profound. It was just meeting in this group spiritual deepening. I could feel the connections among us, the belonging, the growing of the relationships. I could feel that. That was pretty easy. But there was also something I'm going to call for today beyond us experiences. Beyond us might have meant we could sense the experience someone in the group has had when they sat with their mother in their last days. Beyond us could be our reflection on pain and suffering of those in our county that we knew didn't have access to health care, and we got very focused on people who didn't have dental care. We heard of beyond us, or we felt us sometimes when we talked about worship the prior week, maybe some special music that had happened. I think that beyond us sense may have been our collective sense of gratitude for the group and the improbability that we were just there together, being on earth together. In this setting, I often experienced some sense of possibility and hope that I didn't have when I walked in that day. I think we all did. Somehow by that group, our loads were lightened, not just the loads that we shared that day, but I think we walked through life feeling a little lighter. I know we often laughed. There's a renewal that comes when you laugh and you stumble into something and you say something stupid you just didn't expect it would go the way it was. And I hope we partnered in some fresh way with ordained ministers. At that point, I did not know where my path would take us. But I do want to think that something we really were seeking was met through this group. I think we often in religious community, we try to do too much. We forget about the essence of what it is to do a religious community. I'll be honest, I think sometimes we're almost too ambitious. We try to serve too many purposes. There's a book that was edited by John Morgan called Awakening the Soul, and he really boils down the essence of why religious institutions and community exists. And he says it has to do with spiritual transformation. He comes and he believes people seek religious institutions, religious communities for two reasons, for intimacy and ultimacy. The intimacy is not a romantic intimacy, but rather that sense of seeking a community where we can feel known and being accepted for who we are, where we connect in a deep and abiding way. So that's his version of an intimacy, that sense we have of wanting to be close. But he also sees the ultimacy. He says that we are seekers. The seekers come thinking something transcendent, some transforming purpose in our lives that will give us meaning, that will give meaning to our lives. I think these are just basic human yearnings to connect and to feel purpose. I think it's true for Unitarian Universalism and all the faiths that were true at the time of the Edict of Torta. And I don't think they're separate. I don't think we do the intimacy and the ultimacy as two buckets to be checked off, but that they're intricately woven together. They come naturally. I think the intimacy part comes with proximity and gatherings. I think by coming, whether you come to worship every week or you have groups you belong to in the community and book groups, and if you live in a group community, you create the intimacy. I think finding a way to connect with something greater than ourselves is newer territory. I think it manifests in a little bit different way. President Obama said this: "It's when you hitch your wagon to something greater than yourself that you realize your true potential and discover the role that you'll play in writing the next great chapter in the American story." John McCain offered a more targeted description. He says this: "Those who claim their liberty but not their duty to a civilization that ensures it live a half-life. They indulge their self-interest at the cost of their self-respect. The richest men and women possess nothing of real value if their lives have no greater object than themselves. Success, wealth, celebrity, gained and kept for private interests, these are small things. They make us comfortable, ease the way for our children, purchase a fleeting regard for our lives, but not the self-respect that in the end matters most. Sacrifice for a cause greater than self-interest, however, and you invest your life with the imminence of that cause. Obama offers us that need to connect, that hitch your wagon somewhere else outside, and McCain actually talks about sacrifice. He comes from his military tradition. But what the caution they both give us to is having a self-centered view of our life. I think that greater than experience can take place in so many different ways, maybe as a teacher or a coach or a leader. And there's a book called Greater Than Yourself where Steve Farber sees the goal of a genuine leader is to help teammates, employees, and colleagues become more capable, confident, and accomplished than they are by themselves. Some of us know Abraham Maslow. He talked about the hierarchy of needs. So how many folks here remember Maslow's hierarchy? We talked a lot about it in the 8 things. And the peak of that, I can remember my friends and I talking about, do you feel self-actualized? We actually had that conversation over pizza and beer a couple of times. But basically what he's saying is we all need food, we all need shelter, we need basic things, we need some people that care about us. But at some point, we get into something a little greater. If all those needs are satisfied, we want to live into our potential. And he drew it in a pyramid, it looked like the food pyramid. But he did some writing later in his life and said, I blew it. I didn't go far enough. Self-fulfillment and realizing your own potential is not what it's about. He wrote that human beings have a strong need to become more than they can be, and once that need is met, they need to feel needs beyond themselves, to pursue goals that may in fact have little to do with them at all. I offer these all those different ways to picture what is your beyond us sense. What is greater than self? I think as Unitarian Universalists, we tend to think of a purpose that feels we like to align with a greater good, and that's how we talk about our shared values, whether we talk about the principles or the revised values. What we're looking at is something that I will call ultimacy. Sometimes in our lives, we wish that something would change. We want to alter, we want to remove a challenge, or sometimes we resist change. All the things that happen around change are places where you often have a peek at something that is the most ultimate. Can you recall a time of great despair or great joy that came with a new worldview? Maybe you felt something transforming within. There was a way of seeing something greater, of feeling compassion. I think there are times when we also ride change out and we truly are open to where change might take us. I think that is often as we ride it out, not trying to control too much, that we have a sense of what is beyond us. I want to go back to our reading earlier. It says, rest here in your boat, the river calls. Listen to how I flow. The sound of life is cursing all around you. Let the current hold you. Let the current guide you. The river that gently flows through your heart. These are about transcendence. Some points where we feel all at one with the universe or some sort of a profound connection with something or somewhere. Sometimes the source in these moments is not the focus or the destination is unknown. When we let that current guide us, letting go for even just a moment, we feel something different. Maybe it's during a daydream or those times where you actually have a balcony view of your own life, something where you feel set apart. You have these aha moments. I think it was that small group that we had years ago in my UU community that we would use our principles or our values to try and ask these ultimate questions. But I think it also, the other thing I want to think about is how do you make time to do that? We often make time for the intimate connections, but do you make time in your life to find the beyond us, whatever that might mean for you? There's an Indian proverb that says that everyone is a house with 4 rooms, a physical, a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual. Most of us tend to live in one room most of the time, but unless we go into every room every day, even if only to keep it aired out, we are not a complete person. Does it feel worth your time to give spirituality a room in your house? With everything we have going on in our life, do we want to take the times to garner the skills for spiritual awakeness? Do you even know what you do when you got into that spiritual room in the house? Think about that. Maybe it helps if we picture this room. I'm picturing what I think is the most spiritual room, and the room I picture is one with windows. Windows out to something that are very hopeful views. It's not that everything will be rosy or tough, but in times of change or stress, we need a place where we can go and we can take a place where the pros and cons lists, we have stopped them swirling around us and just feel a sense of connection with our bodies. Maybe it's a room or it's a garden or a workshop or a kitchen where you let your deeper questions come. Maybe it's even a place where you share your questions, a place where there's room for grief and sadness. I think the spiritual room for me at times needs to be a party room. I love the fact that the chairs were moved here the other night because we need to be reminded to make room for joy. The spiritual room needs that place for joy and places to imagine and reimagine possibilities. Importantly, what I picture in the room is a cross breeze, where something beyond ourselves can easily flow through the room. Something that helps us notice that we sense the breeze, the flow. It's not static. I think when we intentionally make space for spiritual deepening, it is a chance where we feel more whole. Unitarian Universalists sometimes do this differently than others. Some folks, by now in the Sermon on Spiritual Awakening, have talked more about God. They have talked about a different sense of the Spirit, but I know for some that language works, and for others they see it differently. But what I think we have in common often is Unitarian Universalists are the most spiritual when we build and care for relationships. Unitarian Universalists are spiritual when we honor our deepest needs and desires, when we think of what it is we need. And we are spiritual when we connect with something beyond ourselves, often in the form of service, in the form of care, in the form of asking big, hard questions, and not being afraid to do it with others. The final thought is it is difficult to do spiritual alone. It's why we gather, it's why we come week after week, month after month. We come here for the intimacy, but we also come for the beyond us part, a sense of ultimacy. I think it's likely why those ministers years ago invited a group of us to come and deepen our spirituality together. I think we learned a lot in that small room. May it be so, and blessed be. We are going to have a little chance for discussion in a moment, so I would ask folks to be pondering any of your Beyond Us experiences. But before we do that, we are going to sing our hymn, which is fitting. It is I've Got Peace Like a River, and it's number 100. in your great hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit.
We have some time for, a brief time for discussion. And maybe some of you have been thinking about something beyond yourself. What experiences of that you've had where you felt connected or entranced by the pull of something beyond yourself. Or some other comment.
Reverend Sue, I'd like for you to define for me as precisely as possible what we mean by spirituality. Does it mean emotions? Does it mean believing in things that aren't there? Does it believe we're connected to each other? What does spirituality really mean?
I don't think there's one definition by any matter, but the sermon was trying to define that. So I think spirituality is a sense of feeling whole. So if I go to my simplest place, and when they talk about multiple rooms, having a spiritual room and a physical room, to me it's, and they had emotions separately, but it's that sense that you can't quite precisely define almost by definition of spirituality, but I think it's both a sense of feeling deep connection and a sense that we're not alone in the world and we are part of an interconnected web.
Thank you.
I remember Richard Speck saying once that he thought spirituality for him, he was a regional UU regional rep for a while, that for him spirituality was his connection to the universe, the way he felt.
I think it's, I like the proverb I used is because it differentiates it from some of the other pieces to say it's the least defined, but probably the place that we feel the most complete.
I'm wondering why I asked for this, because some things are just too hard to put into words, but I see this church that we're in today, all of us have chosen to be here this morning, not just for the intimacy that we gain as we know each other better and feel that connection, but for its purpose in being there and welcoming to different faiths, different ideas, different ways to grow, different ways to serve. It's such a wonderful place, a space. So by coming here, I feel that it's certainly beyond myself. It's ripple effect in our community and beyond.
I'm not really sure how I want to say this, but to me, you can't get spirituality until you know yourself. And I don't know how many of us know yourselves, but I know I don't know me very well at all.
Peggy and John. John went and got his own mic in case you don't know back there.
I'm speaking only to the interconnected piece that Sue talked about. When I was much, much younger, I went out on a boat with my father for several days and realized as we were preparing for this trip that he had something in mind, because he had taken a wooden bucket, an old nail bucket, and he had painted it orange, and he had a great deal of rope on the bow of this boat. And it turned out that what he really was thinking about was going whaling. And in fact, it sounds horrific today, but we did, in the Gulf of Maine, come upon a school of blackfish, which are small whales, but very large. And it was a very quiet day, and we could move right into them. And my father got up in the bow and he took his harpoon, and which was probably, I don't know, it was a brass harpoon with a broomstick or something on it. And he did harpoon a whale. And what I remember from that was my horror, because this whole community of animals reacted with consternation that was palpable. And I felt awful about what was going on, but it was so obviously not just a group of fish. It was a community, and we had done something drastic within that community. And the only other time that I felt that way is reading a book called Finding the Mother Tree, where a scientist has spent a lifetime realizing that the trees of the forest are connected through mycorrhizomes, and that they do all kinds of things for each other, which would suggest that the oldest tree there knows which are her own offspring in the seedlings around, and sends particular chemicals to them to increase how they might grow. Anyway, that the forest is interconnected in ways that I never imagined before.
And each tree doesn't stand alone. Thank you.
Yeah.
John, and then we probably are about time to you, Nancy.
Yeah, I was thinking about Eastern religions that say you have to surrender your ego totally, basically lose your soul, not your soul, yourself, to become one with the universe. And I have no answer there. I'm just saying that that's kind of a ambiguous, well, it's difficult, let's put it that way. But so.
And I think a lot of, I read from Obama, McCain, there's lots of reading, but I think a lot of the world's religions, whether it's done through confession, whether it's done through all different ways, are about putting yourself, either blending yourself in, which is sort of that oneness sense, or putting yourself aside to see something more profound and for some perspective. Sometimes that's what I sometimes call the balcony look, where we sometimes feel like we're almost watching our own lives in a disconnected way, but not a bad way. So it's a chance to think about what it means to be spiritually awake. And it's also just a reminder that we're not just here to be a cozy family, though we take care of ourselves well. We're also here to wonder about big questions together, and not to be afraid of having some beyond us experiences, which may be very concrete. It could be how we volunteer in the community is beyond us, or it could be something where you just lean into the mystery differently. Sermon 2, all done now.
And now we will extinguish.
We have closing words. and then
Closing words, sorry, yes.
Closing words, then extinguish the chalice. So I'll do closing words, then you can extinguish the chalice. They're very short. These are words from Reverend Scott Taylor. Having found stillness, may we share peace. Having received connection, may we reach out to others. Having heard the call of our deepest self, may we live in greater alignment. And having returned to our center, may we expand the circle of love. Go in peace, go in love, go knowing love surrounds you wherever you may go. And now we extinguish our chalice together. The words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Then we have our benediction.
Wonderful week, and please join us in the lobby for coffee and tea. Thank you.
Have a great week.